Hello, everyone. Welcome into Above My Pay Grade. My name is Eric. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Can you hit the subscribe, hit the like button for me? That'd be great. I don't like to be doomsday guy, and I kind of am sometimes in my family, unfortunately. And I'm sure you can all relate. You're like, hey, this doesn't look good at all. What the federal government's doing from a fiscal perspective. And I have a visual here from Visual Capitalist I will put in the description below that I wanted to walk through with you that I think is a good way, without browbeating people and saying, hey, wake up, this is going to be bad, to warn them and kind of walk through it like you would a business balance sheet or personal budget, right? If you or your friends have a business or personal budget, this is really easy to understand, and so we're going to walk through it real quick. So you'll notice on the green side of the aisle is assets. So if you look at this from a federal government perspective, assets and liabilities, where do they get their money from? They get their money from taxes, of course, and I'm sure you guys love paying taxes, but they get their money from taxes. Okay, so let's look at their assets. Individual income taxes, those went up substantially, and this is all from 2021, and this is all in billions, so over $2 trillion in individual income taxes. Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid taxes, those immediately get paid out to Social Security beneficiaries, and I did a video on this the other day. Social Security has a piggy bank. When people pay in more than is taken out that year, that piggy bank, or treasury if you will, gets saved for when they pay out more than they take in taxes. Now that piggy bank is supposed to run out, and this is fairly liberal, by 2030. Meaning, by 2030, only taxes, there is no piggy bank, only taxes is what pays out for Social Security. So, people are going to either have to take a pay cut from Social Security benefits, or it's going to have to be reformed. Is anyone talking about this? There's a rare few in Congress, and they always get labeled as people who want to kill old people, right? So what probably is going to happen is the federal government is just going to run a deficit. Okay, so they either have to raise taxes on people who are working to pay for Social Security because the piggy bank doesn't exist anymore by 2030, or cut benefits, or run a deficit. One of three things, right? Further down, you got corporate income tax and all these excise taxes and smaller taxes. But here's the big thing I want to look at, that black arrow down at the bottom there. Deficit. The deficit was rather high in 2021 because of we are still dealing with COVID, right? And so the deficit was over $2 trillion, almost $3 trillion. Now the CBO, the bipartisan bipartisan math wizards at Congress have said that we're going to average $1.6 trillion a year over the next 10 years in deficit spending, meaning we spend more than we take in. So that black line, that deficit, is the amount we spend more than we take in taxes. So you may be saying to yourself, Eric, why don't we just raise taxes? Great question. If we raise taxes, if we raise taxes to cover the deficit right now, today, we would go into an economic depression. Because I don't know about you, but most people stop working if there's a certain tipping point. But if like 60% of their money goes to the federal government, which is why they hired 87,000 IRS agents, because they realize what a problem this is. They need more taxes. They need it, and they cannot have anybody wiggling out of that Venmo payment tax, right? So they need more revenue. They need it. But if they were to raise taxes to cover the deficit, they would have a massive problem on their hands because they'd have a recession because people would stop working. Why would you want to? That's like communist. That's communism. You're going to work and you're paying half, if not more, and we're almost there already, to the federal government, and people stop working. Look up the Laffer curve if you don't believe me. There's a certain amount of diminishing returns when it comes to the government raising taxes because people stop paying them. And if you look at throughout history, the federal government has had pretty wild, from one administration to another, different tax laws, if you will. But the percent of GDP that's taken in is pretty much the same, no matter what the tax laws are, which kind of proves the Laffer curve. All right, so that is their assets. Let's take a look at their liabilities, because there's a lot of them, okay? Income security. You got, let's see, over $1 trillion in things like unemployment, which is pretty high in 2021. I'll give them that. But let's say we go into an economic recession/depression. We're in a recession right now. Are we going into a depression? Methinks yes. Okay? Depression is years of lower GDP and usually 10% drop in GDP. So you don't know you're in a depression until they admit it. Same thing with the recession. But income security and unemployment will go up. Their liabilities will go up if they have an economic depression. Guess what goes down in an economic depression? That's right, individual income taxes. So people are paying less in taxes and needing more from the government. What does that mean? Deficit spending, okay? Social Security takes up a large chunk. You got Medicaid, healthcare, $797 billion, national defense. You can argue till the cows come home about cutting national defense spending, and I wouldn't argue with you. However, as Russia and China present a real-world threat and rising power, I don't think national defense spending is going to be cut anytime soon. Medicare, and then right below Medicare, you'll see net interest. And this is what I want to focus on. Net interest on debt. Keep in mind, the federal government doesn't pay down debt. When they're paying on a treasury, right, they sell a treasury, and let's say you give them $1,000, and they'll say, we'll pay you 1.5% interest for 10 years on the $1,000. And at the end, we'll give you the $1,000 back too. They just take out another $1,000 treasury at the end of that. They don't actually pay down debt. They only pay that 1.5% interest on debt. So they're not paying down debt. So that net, even if the interest rate stays the same in perpetuity, forever, their net interest payment goes up every year because they're taking on more debt every year. But here's the kicker. The actual interest rate is going up too. Okay, it would be like you having a home mortgage, and every single year you add leverage to it. And every single year, the interest rate goes up on the home mortgage. You could see the problem, right? So looking at this chart, you say, wait a second. They're in $30 trillion of debt. They're running more deficits every year. They're spending more than they take in. How are we going to get out of this? Another great question. You know how we're going to get out of it? You. That's right. Somebody has to pay for it. And who's going to pay for it? The middle class. Because typically how governments get out of this problem is spending, deficit spending, which means stealing your time. I say this over and over again. The federal government and these politicians don't really think fiscal responsibility because, unfortunately, voters, if you say, hey, look, we don't have the money for Social Security, we're going to run out of that piggy bank by 2030, we're going to need to cut benefits, you're going to not get voted in, unfortunately. That's just the how it works. So the voters have to get smacked across the face with an economic depression baseball bat, and then they finally realize, oh, wait, there is no free lunch. And so politicians will continue to do what politicians do, think 4-year terms, and hopefully the thing doesn't fall apart on their watch. And you'll notice the heat and the economic disparity is heating up. The rich got richer through COVID, the poor got poorer, and the middle class are barely hanging on because everything becomes more expensive. And if you didn't get a raise that's commensurate with inflation, and that's government advertised inflation, we all know it's higher, you're losing purchasing power. If that happens over a 10-year time span and you are in the middle class, you're not in the middle class anymore, right? And that's who's paying. That's who's paying for this buffoonery that's going on with the federal government. And it's really sad. But if you have friends or family who are like, man, you just seem so doom and gloom, it's all seemed to work out before, I like to just point out the math. Like, if you were to look at this from a personal budget perspective or from a business perspective, how viable would this business be in a couple years? It wouldn't, okay? The one caveat I like to say is the federal government, unlike a business or you, can print money. And that is the easy button. The easy button to get out of this problem is printing money. And that's what they always do, and that's what they're going to continue to do. So when people look at this and they're like, oh, inflation's going down, yippee, we're at 8.5. The system is broke. The federal government is broken and broke, financially speaking. So what they do to get out of these problems is not tell their constituents that we need to have fiscal responsibility and cut benefits. They spend more money. So what do you need to do? Buy things the federal government can't print. Gold, silver, Bitcoin, real estate. That's what I like. But they're going to continue to print, unfortunately. It's a very sad state of affairs, but if you were to look at this balance sheet and you were an accountant for a business, you're like, were you guys drunk last year? What are you doing? Oh, you've been doing this for 20 years? Yeah, and they're going to continue to do it. Let me know what you think, if you think that the federal government will ever be fiscally responsible without some economic catastrophe, because I don't think they ever will. We need that economic depression baseball bat to hit voters across the face and go, wake them up and be like, okay, there is no free lunch. That's what needs to happen, unfortunately. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. See you guys in the next one. Peace.